Have you ever stopped to think about how close you are to the edge of your own moral abyss? From the greatest historical atrocities to your coworker who gossiped last week. Humanity seems to have a great affinity for cruelty. We are often rude, indifferent, and even sadistic, even when it doesn't benefit us at all. And you know what's most disturbing? Sometimes this behavior comes from the person you least expect. Sometimes you see a kind and generous person turn into a monster right before your eyes. And sometimes that person is us. I know you, dear human watching me, like to think of yourself as a good person. Maybe you return wallets you find on the street. Maybe you volunteer at animal shelters on weekends. Maybe you donate your clothes to those in need. But let's be honest for a moment, just between us. Have you ever taken something that wasn't yours just because you knew no one was looking? Huh? Who hasn't, right? A hotel pen, a neighbor's Wi-Fi, a steakhouse knife. There are crazy people for everything in this world. I know it seems silly, but that's exactly how it starts. The path to evil doesn't begin with a grand decision to become Lex Luthor. It starts with small, seemingly insignificant transgressions. You might think you're immune to these things, the Superman of morality. But history and science show us something very different. Under the right conditions, any person, no matter how kind, just or good, can become something they once judged as monstrous. Our sense of morality is much more fragile than we imagine. It's like that New Year's resolution. I'm going to hit the gym this year and get shredded. And by the second week of the year, it's already gone down the drain. And the big problem is that most people only realize they're changing when it's too late. Understanding this process is fundamental, because it's the only way we can prevent it from happening to us and the people around us. So how do good people turn into monsters? The science of evil, the idea that your character is immutable, your morals unshakable, and that you are always the same wonderful person at every moment of your life is pure fiction. Who you are isn't something set in stone, sculpted from marble like Michelangelo's David. It's more like a sandcastle or the little name you write on the beach that the wind takes away or the sea comes and destroys everything. What a wonderful metaphor, right? But it's something that constantly changes with the decisions you make and the environment around you. Think about it. How do you act when you're with your friends? Is it the same way you act when you're surrounded by children? Unless you're a complete lunatic, of course it's different, because the environment matters. The environment shapes how we act, much more than we realize. And that's the catch. When we try to understand bizarre behavior, like a serial killer, we always look inward. It's the personality, the mind, the genetics. Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, a bunch of crazy psychopaths. Done. You have your answer in your little box and the problem is solved. There's just one little problem. Science has discovered that the real catalyst is often in the external world. Show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. Remember your adolescence? Everyone wearing the same clothes, listening to the same music, talking the same way, like an army of clones looking for acceptance. Adults do the same thing, but now they call it networking and dress code. The problem arises when these groups begin to show their darker side. Protected by the herd, normal individuals can do the most atrocious things. There are two scientific experiments that illustrate this very well. In the 1960s, you were invited to a study on learning that later became known as the Milgram experiment. In it, you become the teacher and must administer electric shocks to a student for every mistake they make. The shocks get progressively stronger. The student on the other side screams, cries, and begs you to stop. You can clearly see all the pain and suffering in their eyes. What do? 65% of the participants, ordinary people just like you and me, administered shocks up to the maximum voltage, even while hearing the screams of despair. But why? Most of the participants said they continued because a guy in a lab coat was telling them to. It's that simple. People convince themselves, I'm just following orders. It's not my fault. I have no choice. And so they threw their morals out the window in the name of obedience. It's terrifying, but you haven't seen anything yet. Now we have to go to prison. Philip Zimbardo was a psychologist who dedicated his life to studying the specific circumstances that can transform ordinary and even good people into monsters. He called this the Lucifer effect. I don't even need to tell you what that name is based on, right? In 1971, Dr. Zimbardo had a brilliant idea. Recruit 24 healthy university students and run a mock prison for about 2 weeks, just to see what would happen. After all, what could go wrong, right? He then transformed the basement of Stanford University into a prison. He randomly divided the students into 2 groups. Half became guards and the other half prisoners. And so, the famous Stanford prison experiment was born. The goal of Zimbardo and his study group was to understand what happens when power is unequally distributed among ordinary people. And guess what the result was? The experiment became a true nightmare. The guards began to harass, humiliate, and dehumanize the prisoners with a cruelty that shocked all the researchers. They were normal, physically and mentally healthy students on Monday, and by Friday, they had become sadistic monsters. The experiment was stopped in just 6 days. So what's the lesson from all this? The right circumstances can transform any of us into an instrument of cruelty. I know you might be thinking right now, I would never do something like that. It would be different for me. But would it really? The truth is, you and no one else can be sure, and that's the scariest part. But according to Dr. Zimbardo, evil isn't born with us. It's manufactured. There's a terribly simple formula for it. So now it's time for us to discover the recipe for corrupting a good person. The recipe. Unfortunately, this recipe is simpler than you think. The bad part is that the ingredients are everywhere. The good part is that now you'll know how to identify them. Remember the Milgram experiment? The formula is simple. Put someone in a lab coat giving orders and you're good to go. Most people, no matter how good they are, will obey until the very last consequences. And then comes that uncomfortable question. How often do you question the authorities in your life? Or do you simply accept that they must know better? Your boss, your favorite politician, that influencer you love. When was the last time you stopped to think, is what they're saying really right? Maybe it's time to start asking those questions. Because blind obedience is the first step to abandoning your moral compass without even realizing it. The second ingredient has a complicated name, de-individuation. But the concept is very simple. When you feel that no one will recognize you, whether you're in a group or a crowd, your morals can go out the window. You can lose self-control and have behaviors you wouldn't normally have. Why do you think vandals wear masks or internet trolls hide behind anime profile pictures? When you disappear into the crowd, your inner monster feels comfortable coming out. And in the online world, it's even worse. People say things they would never say in person because they feel invisible. They feel like it's impossible for them to be held accountable for it. Everything I've said leads to the most important ingredient. There's no way to escape it. This is the main factor that turns good people into monsters, dehumanization. You convince people that others aren't really human. So, when you ask, how do you get someone to commit atrocities? It's simple. You show that the victim is not like us. They don't deserve the same empathy. And history shows us that this is an extremely dangerous path. Imagine a ruler who took a nation destroyed by war, revived the economy, ended unemployment, made the GDP grow by more than 100%, and practically doubled the national income. He was a man who loved art, was kind to children. He was cheered by his people. There's just one small detail. He was also responsible for the Holocaust. Hitler ordered the imprisonment of Jews in concentration camps. He took the lives of over 6 million innocent people, men, women, and children tortured and murdered just for not being Aryan. And until the end, he genuinely believed he was saving Germany from an impure threat. He saw himself as the hero of the story. And don't be fooled, this isn't just an isolated case. Stalin promoted great industrial growth in the Soviet Union, creating millions of jobs. However, he also had more than 700,000 people killed, imprisoned millions in Siberia, and was responsible for the deaths of 4 million people in the Great Ukrainian Famine. And yet Stalin saw himself as a hero, defending the Soviet Union from traitors. Do you see the pattern? The greatest atrocities in history were committed by people who thought they were doing good. And you might think, oh, that's a thing of the past. Has humanity evolved? Is that true? How many times have you seen good people justifying cruel things? It's to end fascism or communism. It's to save democracy. It's to protect the children. The need to belong to a group is a natural human trait and is stronger than ever today. When you label someone as an enemy, it becomes easy to justify anything. Because when you stop seeing someone as human, you open the door for your dark side. No one wakes up one morning and decides to become a monster. It's a slow process, fueled by small moral compromises, obedience to authority, and a growing sense of us versus them. And to top it off, all that's missing is the final touch. The missing ingredient in this recipe is to create a narrative that makes you feel like a hero. Words become weapons. Torture becomes interrogation. Terrorism becomes resistance against the oppressor. Crimes against humanity it's just a different culture. What allows people to believe they are good even when they do terrible things is the famous cognitive dissonance, which is the mental discomfort we feel when our actions contradict our beliefs. So what do? Instead of changing our actions, we change our beliefs to justify what we're doing. Instead of admitting you were wrong, you say, "I had no choice," or "they deserved it," or "it's for the greater good, to save democracy, to end racism, fascism, and communism." This way, you continue to see yourself as a good person while acting in a way you previously considered unthinkable. But your brain doesn't stop there. The more you convince yourself that you are right, the easier it becomes to demonize those who disagree with you. That's when you start to have the illusion of moral superiority. You not only justify your actions, you start to see yourself as superior to others. How can this person be so dumb or evil that they can't understand this thing that's so obvious to me? The more you feel you're on the right side, the blinder you become to your own moral failings. That's why propaganda always paints opponents as ruthless monsters. Because once you stop seeing someone as a human being, anything can be justified and sometimes even celebrated. And since we're talking about how propaganda manipulates us, there's another area that also suffers a lot from manipulation: investments. Buy now, don't miss this opportunity. Just click the button below and it's a guaranteed return. To avoid falling for these scams, you have to do what I always say here. Always try to study a lot before investing in anything. Education is fundamental for you to protect yourself, your assets, and your families. And I know that taking the first step is very complicated, especially when we talk about new products, like digital assets and cryptocurrencies. And it's precisely to give you more confidence that MB came to sponsor this video with the First Steps campaign. You'll open your account for free, which takes less than 5 minutes. You can use the QR code on the screen or the first link in the description. And by investing at least $50 in any asset on the platform, within 7 days, you'll receive a $25 deposited directly into your MB account to invest however you want. Remember, this is not an investment recommendation. You don't have to invest in digital assets or cryptocurrencies. If you don't feel secure about it, study everything well. Stocks, cryptocurrencies, real estate funds, direct treasury, even savings. Know exactly what's happening with your money so you can be in control of the situation. If you feel it makes sense for you to invest in digital assets or cryptocurrencies, MB is the largest platform in this segment in Latin America. They have over 12 years of history and more than 4 million clients. Thank you very much, MB, for sponsoring this video. Recap of ingredients. Recapping, the complete recipe, then contains 5 ingredients. First, find an authority to obey. Second, disappear into the crowd. Third, dehumanize the enemy. Us versus them. Fourth, create your narrative. I am the hero. Fifth, feel morally superior. They don't have different views. They are stupid or evil. There, you have the perfect formula to turn any good person into a monster. And the scariest thing is that you see this recipe being applied every day, in politics, on social media, in religious, ideological conflicts. But if these forces are so powerful, if the environment shapes who we are so much and anyone can become a monster, does that mean we are condemned? How to overcome evil? No, we are not condemned. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Circumstances can corrupt us, but they can also transform us into heroes. But calm down, it's not the way you imagine. I'm not talking about having superhuman strength or flying around. Real heroism has nothing to do with superpowers or epic grand gestures. It's something much simpler and at the same time, much more difficult. And the first step to becoming a hero is to be conscious, to accept an extremely uncomfortable truth. You can also be the villain. Only when we recognize our vulnerability can we do something to protect ourselves from this terrible path. Real awareness begins when you stop seeing yourself as immune to evil and start asking yourself uncomfortable questions. Am I justifying something I used to think was wrong? Am I treating someone as inferior? If my favorite politician, singer, influencer did this, would I still criticize them? If someone I hate was doing exactly what I'm doing now, would that be acceptable? These questions sometimes hurt, but that's exactly why they work. Regularly questioning your actions, motivations, and justifications helps you stay connected to your moral values, but awareness alone is not enough. You need to understand that you always have a choice. It's easy to have principles when it costs nothing. The real test is when doing the right thing is difficult, when it means losing friends, status, comfort, when telling the truth means being canceled, when resisting means being alone. In these moments, it's what separates those who really have character from those who only have good intentions on paper, or when it's convenient. Although we can't always control the world around us, we can always control our response to it. We can choose awareness over blindness, courage over conformity, empathy over indifference. And most importantly, we can recognize that this battle between good and evil happens within us every day, in every choice we make. In the Milgram experiment, 65% of people administered shocks to the end, but 35% said no. Why? Because of personal responsibility. It doesn't matter who's telling me to. It doesn't matter if everyone else is doing it. I won't do it. I don't think it's right. And pay attention to one very important thing. They weren't kinder, more resilient, or better than anyone else. They simply chose to take responsibility for their own actions. The power to resist isn't something that just happens. It's something you have to choose every day in every situation of your life. Just because someone has a uniform, a title, or speaks with confidence doesn't mean that person is right. You always have the power to say no, to walk away, to resist. And sometimes that's all you need to do to not fall into the abyss. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. This phrase was said by Dr. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who went through 4 concentration camps and lost almost his entire family in the Holocaust. Even in those places where survival was the most important thing, he saw Jewish prisoners who, even when hungry and exhausted, comforted others and shared their last piece of bread. They weren't epic gestures. They didn't go viral on Instagram. They were acts of a quiet heroism, proof that it is possible to maintain goodness even when everything around seems lost. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, "The line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor classes, nor political parties, but right through every human heart." This phrase summarizes everything. The truth is that you carry the seeds of both good and evil within you. We are walking contradictions, capable of a cruelty that is difficult to describe and at the same time, of a heroism that fills our eyes with tears. Everything we've talked about so far shows the importance of external factors in the actions we take, of how the environment and the people around us can influence who we are and the choices we make. However, we are not blank slates shaped only by the environment. We have a biological nature that also influences our choices. So a question arises, after all, are we human beings good or evil by nature? The true human nature, we live in an era where social media algorithms and news channels feed us with tragedy 24 hours a day. Robbery, murder, corruption, war, only the worst in the world. And then, of course, you start to believe that humanity is lost, that your father who voted for Bolsonaro, your cousin who voted for Lula, are people who are completely different from you in everything. Social media has become a machine for creating invisible enemies, people we've loved our whole lives, bonds of trust that have been nurtured for years, decades, broken by a stupid little thing this size. So-and-so voted for Lula, communist. Such and such voted for Bolsonaro, he's a fascist denialist. We've become organized political fans. And not just for politicians, but in various areas of life. Everyone who thinks differently from you in any aspect of life has become a demon who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air you breathe. And this spreads to everything: religion, class, race, gender. There's always someone trying to convince us that those who think differently are automatically our enemies. They put us in boxes, then say that those in another box will never understand us. But that's a big illusion. And look, don't get me wrong, okay? I'm not saying we should ignore evil or pretend that racism, homophobia, authoritarianism, denialism, and other forms of discrimination don't exist. On the contrary, we need to fight them, and with great force. But the question is how? Martin Luther King once said that returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding a deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. The solution to defeating evil in others is not with more evil, pointing fingers, screaming. As tempting as that may be sometimes, I know that hate blinds, but knowledge passed with love and persistence brings light and clarity even to the darkest nights. And before you think I'm some naive dummy, stop and think for a moment. Do you really believe that half the country woke up one morning and decided to be evil? That your political, religious, or any other thought in your life alone completely defines who you are as a person? The truth is, we are much more alike than social media, newspapers, and politicians want us to believe. Your political opinion, your religion, ethnicity, gender, or the team you support are just small parts of who you are. It's like a trailer, but you, my bros and broettes, are the movie. You are not just your religion, your vote, or your gender. You are a complex human being who contains all of that, yes, but transcends it. You are the experiences you've had, the bonds you've created, the choices you've made. You are that person who, even when devastated, had the energy to comfort your sister at your grandfather's funeral, who got emotional watching your father teach your daughter to ride a bicycle. Because deep down, it's these experiences that truly connect us to one another. And yes, I believe that human beings are good by nature, but not because I'm an irrational and blind optimist, but because science shows me this. There are several studies from Harvard and Kyoto University with thousands of participants showing that our first impulse, our instinctive reaction, is to cooperate and help. Small children, even before they learn what is right or wrong, already demonstrate helping and empathetic behaviors. It's as if we came with a built-in goodness GPS. The problem is that sometimes we forget to use it. But then you might be thinking, if we are all so good, why does evil dominate headlines and social media? The answer is more obvious than it seems, because it's not our natural state. Have you ever seen a news story like this? Husband sings from the window to his wife who is in the hospital. Friends and neighbors celebrate the return of a teenager who finished chemotherapy. Of course not. That's not news, it's not shocking. There are countless people giving money, time, risking their own lives, just to help other people, without wanting anything in return, without worrying if anyone is watching. And if you don't believe me, that's fine. But think about this. What is more contagious? The evil that needs a recipe to corrupt us, or a laugh that just needs to happen for everyone to join in? A gesture of care that doesn't need to be spoken and is naturally replicated? The truth is that goodness is naturally contagious. The problem is that evil makes more noise. I won't lie to you. We are capable of atrocities that defy all explanation, and history is there to prove it. We are the same species that invented the atomic bomb, but also that develops vaccines that save millions of lives every year. The Lucifer effect shows us exactly that. We carry both possibilities within us, and that is what makes us human. The ability to choose between good and evil is what gives our actions moral value. Because if we were programmed only with the ability to do good, our goodness would have no merit. If we were destined to simply do evil, we would have no hope. But we are free to choose, and that's where our greatness and our responsibility lie. That's why this video has the recipe for evil, because you need to be aware of what's happening. Evil needs to be built, manufactured, and fed every day. In every small attitude you take, you decide, am I going to feed the good side or the bad side within me? In traffic, when someone cuts you off. On the internet, when you're about to comment something. In family conversations when tempers flare. Remember? I started this video by asking how close you are to your own moral abyss. Now you know the answer. The distance is just a few daily decisions. It's in these small and sometimes invisible moments that you decide who you really are. And no matter how many times you've made mistakes before, you can act differently today because now you know the game. You know the ingredients that make up the recipe: blind obedience, anonymity, dehumanization, the heroic narrative, and moral superiority. And when you see these ingredients being mixed in politics, on social media, at work, or even inside your own head, you will stop, think, question, and act in the way you think is best, not what others expect. You are no longer a lost face, blindly following orders. You are conscious of the forces that can drag you into darkness. It is not perfection that defines us, but our ability to recognize our mistakes, learn from them, and take responsibility for what we do. And maybe that's exactly what makes us extraordinary. Because in the end, the question isn't whether you're a good or bad person, or whether you will or won't become a monster. The question is, what kind of person do you decide to be today? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and share. And for more content that challenges your mind, follow Curiosities of Humanity.